Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, and coming up on today's show, we're going to look at some Raiders surprise cut candidates after the 2025 NFL Draft. I do this show every single year, and I always like to put names in that I think would surprise the nation if it's a cut. Though Chugs did tell me, he's like, bro, I don't know if these are big enough of a surprise. So one of the things that I want to say is this. This is why you subscribe to the Raiders Report. I'm somebody that's always going to come up here, give you my honest opinion, and obviously not everything that I say is going to come true, but some of the stuff obviously does end up happening. I always say you will be a smarter Raiders fan, and a lot of people gave us shit last season when we said, I know the Raiders went out and signed Michael Gallup, but I think that this could be somebody that would be a surprise cut candidate because if you read there, Cowboys source, Gallup is playing on one leg. A few weeks later, he ended up retiring and ended up, not making the roster overall. That is why you subscribe to the Raiders Report. So the way that we're going to do this show today is this. I have 5 names up here that, following the NFL Draft, if they were to get cut right now, I think some Raiders fans would be like, all right, like that's a little bit of a surprise since it's happening now. I have ranked them from least surprising to the most surprising cut candidates. So number 5 compared to number 1, 1 is more of a shocker. Let's go to number 5 here on the video, and it's going to be Zamir White. And I think depending on who you talk to, some people would say this would be a surprise. Other people would say it's not. I am in the boat of, yes, I think Zeus is good enough to be on an NFL roster, but I don't know if he's going to want to be on this roster. He was drafted in the 4th round back in 2022, so he does have 1 year left on his contract. His cap hit this season for the Silver and Black is $1.29 million, and if you end up cutting him, you save a little over $1 million. You eat $186,000. But the Raiders went out and they drafted Ashton Jeanty in round 1. No disrespect to Zamir White. There is nothing that Zamir offers to the Raiders that Ashton Jeanty doesn't do at a higher level overall. And then on top of that, you also went out and you assigned Raheem Mostert to be your RB2. Sincere McCormick looked a lot better last season. And overall, I just don't see why we would keep Zamir White on this roster because he also doesn't offer you anything in special teams. And if he offered you some in special teams, like, maybe a guy like Dylan Laube potentially could, well, then that would be a little bit more reason to bring him in. But I would say both sides are probably going to split up this offseason. Let's go to number 4 here, and it's going to be Charles Snowden, defensive end of the Las Vegas Raiders. And the reason why he's on this show is because of what he did last season and because of his court case on July 22nd for that DUI case. If the Raiders move on from him, you save the full $960,000. The Raiders did re-sign Malcolm Koonce. You signed 2 versatile defensive tackles and J.J. Pegues and also Tonka Hemingway on day 3 of the NFL Draft. I know Snowden made the roster last season. He had 39 tackles, 1.5 sacks. Quite frankly, I don't know if there was another player that I rooted for more last offseason to make the roster because of just how much of a player, of a glue guy he was in that locker room. But if I'm looking at this new team and I'm looking at building things the right way, if Snowden didn't have his issues, he would be somebody that I would, again, root for to make this team. But if I was Pete Carroll and John Spytek, I would want to move on from all the bad that happened with that past regime. And I'm sorry, Charles Snowden is a part of that bad situation that happened with that last regime. So if it was me, the last thing I want to be worrying about is bad attention on me right before we're getting ready to start training camp. And the Charles Snowden news would be bad news probably right before you're getting ready to go into training camp. And if it was me, I just wouldn't want to deal with the headache. So one of the things that I want y'all to do, and that's what this show is all about, it's about interacting with each other. And I hope when I ask a question, who's a surprise cut candidate for the Raiders after the draft, you go down to the comments section. You answer that. I have the ability to give you guys my opinion, but I am really, really proud of how many people always watch this show and how many people give me their honest opinions on this show. So you're about to get it with the YouTube ad break. While that ad is playing, I want you to scroll on down and give me your answer to that question. Let's go to number 3 here on our surprise cut candidates list post-draft. I'm going to go with Thayer Munford. And I had recently did a 53-man roster projection video, depending on when you guys see that. I don't know exactly when I'm going to release that video. But Munford was somebody that did end up making that show. But with that being said, if the Raiders want to keep 8 offensive linemen, or if the Silver and Black bring in another offensive lineman that takes Munford's spot, I would say there's 8 O-line that I know for a fact they're going to make this 53-man unless an injury pops up. Because he was a 7th-round pick in 2022, because he's in the final year of his contract, and because the Raiders went out and drafted 2 offensive linemen in round 3 in Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant, Plus, this is an organization that does believe in DJ Glaze. They passed on Armin Membu. John Spytek has spoke very highly of Glaze. So when you add all of that into the equation, on top of the fact that we just got to be honest with ourselves, Munford was a disaster last season. You know what I mean? And he did a pretty solid job in 2024. And I was hoping that we were going to see a better version of him, but when he was asked to play on the left side when Colt Miller went down, that was bad. When he was asked to play on the right side, it was bad. I've always said that I think Munford is a better guard than a tackle prospect, so maybe that's one of the ways that they could keep him around. But if it was up to me, I would move on from him. You end up cutting him. You save the money that you can save, and then you just keep this thing moving. But if you want to keep Measure 9 offensive linemen, I don't think that that's a bad idea either. One of the things that I also want to tell you guys about here on today's show, I want to get the Ashton Jeanty rookie jersey to be the #1 top-selling rookie jersey in the NFL. And as it stands, he is #4 behind Shador, Cam Ward, and Travis Hunter. If you want to get a Jeanty jersey, you can go to chatsports.com/Raiders jerseys. Also, you can go to chatsports.com/Jeanty, whatever's a little bit easier for you to remember. If you're like, you know what, Mitch, I already got a Jeanty jersey because you gave away 20 of them during your draft coverage. Then if you go to chatsports.com/Raiders jerseys, you'll be able to get a Bowers, a Jacoby Myers, a Max Crosby. There's tons and tons of jerseys there. But if you only want the Jeanty jersey, chatsports.com/Jeanty. Those links are going to be available to y'all down in the comments and down in the description of today's show. If you're like, you know what, man, we're in Vegas, I'm going to roll the dice here a little bit. We are doing a Jeanty jersey raffle, $5 super chat, or a $5 super thanks to be entered. Winner will be announced Friday, May 30th. Good luck to everybody that tries to get in for their chance to get a Jeanty jersey. Let's go to number 2 here on the list. It's going to be Leki Fotu, defensive tackle. I understand that Las Vegas signed Fotu this offseason, but just because you sign a player doesn't mean he is a lock to make it. I'll admit, cutting him maybe doesn't make all too much sense, but at the exact same time, if you think an NFL team's going to sweat over $568,000, and you honestly haven't been watching the NFL for that long, but the Raiders drafted Tonka Hemingway in the 4th round at 135. Then they went out and drafted J.J. Pegues in the 6th round at 180, and both of those defensive tackles, albeit aren't as big as Fotu, but they are super versatile. Then you go out and you look at the UDFA and Anthony Booker. And then also the Raiders recently added an international pathway program player and Leki Fotu, who is a humongous human being at 350 pounds. John Ulalu, he's also a younger player. I think that he needs to be able to add another maybe 10 to 15 pounds. If the silver and black like with what they see from some of these younger players, just keep an eye on Leki Fotu not making this roster. Let's go to the final name here on our surprise cut candidates video, and it is Dylan Laube. Chugs gave me some shit saying, I don't know if Laube's all that surprising. I would say it depends who you talk to, because I kind of agree with that statement, and I kind of don't agree with that statement, where he's got a cap hit of $999,000. You save $882, not that big of a deal. You go out, you draft Jeanty. You go out and you sign Mostert. And if you look at the Raiders running back room, if it was up to me right now that I'm making this video, I'm keeping Jeanty, I'm keeping Mostert, I'm going to end up keeping Sincere McCormick, and then you're probably going to keep another name on that list. I don't think it's going to be Zamir White. Do you decide to keep Chris Collier? Maybe. Do you decide to keep Conroy, the UDFA, who's like this fullback tight end hybrid and is a great athlete? Maybe. Or do you keep the guy that had 1 carry last season and fumbled the football? The only reason why I could see Lowby maybe making the team is for special teams. But then with that being said, we just had an interview with Tommy Mellott. If you haven't seen it yet, please go check it out. It's on the Raiders Report. And Mellott spoke about his relationship with Raiders special teams coach Tom McMahon. And we know how important relationships are to this organization, on top of the fact that A.J. Cole was the very first player that reached out to Mellott and also worked with him this offseason. So if you were to ask me, Mitch, what do I think is the biggest role that Laube's going to play this year? It's not going to be running back. It's going to be special teams. And because he was drafted by the last regime in the 6th round, well, special teams sounds like that might be Tommy Mellott duty. And then the fact that also the Raiders went out and they drafted 3 wide receivers and a Jack Besh, Dante Thornton Jr., and also Mellott, that could also mean Trey Tucker's going to get some special teams work. I'm sorry, I just don't quite see how Laube ends up making this roster. With that all being said, I know that Lowby did meet with John Spytek and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last season for a pre-combine visit. So there is at least a little bit of a connection there. But often when you move on from a player in the 6th round just 1 year after, I would consider that a surprise cut candidate. Now, a huge shout out to everybody that tuned in to today's show. And reminder, if you want to share this video, please don't be afraid to tag me on Instagram and Twitter at Mitchell Renz 365.